At this point, friends, we have that pretty much down to a science. Now, we've been living in this camper for almost 3 months. I know it's hard to believe, but if you watched our camper build series, this thing is getting us down the road, and quite comfortably, I must add. So friends, we've already been from Colorado over to Salt Lake City and back. That was our first kind of exploratory trip. And then we took it up all the way past Portland, all the way into the Seattle area to Whidbey Island. From there, we went down to the Tacoma area, across to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, up to Whitefish, Montana, and then back where we live in Alamosa, Colorado. Now we just set out on another trip. We've already been to Estes Park, down to Avon, and right now we're in Grand Lake, Colorado. So friends, it's about time to do an update on this camper. We want to walk through some of the good things, some of the positives, a little bit about the build, what went good, what went bad, what things are working in here, where we could see some room for improvement, and just basically how's the old Coachmen handling all the things we throw at it. The outer components and the shell, and the main structure of the camper, and the axles and the wheels have all held up so good. Of course, you guys know we had to change out the axles last minute, and those things have held up so good. At first, I was checking them every time we stopped, making sure all the bolts were tight and everything. And now we just got into a pretty good routine of doing a periodic check around the camper every so often. We were a little worried about the back walls actually caving in. I know that sounds crazy, but if you saw the build and you saw what the front walls look like, I think you'll understand why. So the shell has held up really good. There's just little things like on the door, we've had to add these hasps or lasps, depending on who you're asking. And we had to make it kind of look like Fort Knox. Again, there's lots of things on this camper that looks tacky and cheesy, but it just gets the work done. Beyond that, the floor and things like that have held up really well. Some of the repairs with the steps and the new front bench seat has held up really good, and we're really happy about how some of these things are working. We haven't hit too much rain. We hit rain a little bit up in Montana. We had some heavy storms, and overall it fared pretty well. We were concerned about the seam that runs across the front and across the back of the camper, and unfortunately that failed us. So we got to spend some more time on that. That was an area that we wish we could have developed more and sunk more money into, but it's just kind of a give and take and trying to figure out what's the best route to take. So overall, I think that Dicor roof is handling pretty good. I'm just a little bummed out at that little spot that seemed to leak on the roof. One little issue that arose right away was the bikes. So we had a bike rack attached to our spare tire, and unfortunately it was so heavy, it started breaking the mount for that spare tire. I think we were in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho at that point, and luckily we were able to sort this out by looking on Facebook Marketplace and finding this awesome new bike rack. So friends, we were also dragging the bikes, I mean inches from hitting the ground in a few spots, going in gas stations and stuff like that. So our new rack, as you can see, keeps the bikes way higher than even the bumper would be. Sadly enough, we haven't been able to get the hot water heater working. So as far as showers, we really love, and this might be a pro tip, to stop by rec centers. Usually the showers are relatively cheap. Of course, there's truck stops. Even some campsites you stay in will have showers. So we're keeping clean, maybe not as much and as often as we do at home, but this is another area that we're gonna have to either put some money into or just hold off for the next camper. This is one of those areas where I spend a considerable amount of time. If I'm not cooking or sleeping in the back, I'm up here either reading the word, of course, getting fed, or I'm working on the computer, editing videos, getting stuff done with finances and bills and whatnot. And so this has kind of been a chase lounge for me. And sometimes Jolene will take a turn and reading and different stuff like that. There's really cool little lights back here that work awesome for reading. So we've really enjoyed this part. At first we thought we kind of built it wrong and it's a little awkward shaped, but if you use it as a chase lounge, it's ended up being really good for us. One thing I don't like is trying to access the cubbies below. If you've been in any camper with those couches that flip up and you try to grab stuff underneath or the drawers, the systems are just designed really poorly and it's frustrating getting stuff out of there. Unfortunately, we had to learn a few things the hard way. Now guys, we like French press coffee. That's something that we did always at home, and we tried to carry that tradition here into the camper. When we're plugged in, we just like running the Keurig. That way, we're having less mess and less cleanup. Well, little did we know we were actually backing up our gray water. So what happened is these coffee grounds kind of compacted in that 2-inch hose that goes into this 3-inch hose right before you let it out of the camper, and that got plugged up. So I remember recently we dumped, and I was thinking, there's nothing coming, and we had a small leak, so I thought to myself, maybe all the gray water drained out. Now luckily we had been camping in places where that's okay, and so we weren't breaking any rules or anything, dropping the gray water. I was just thinking, what's going on? How did it drain that much? Well, about a day or two into our next camp spot, we had realized that we had no room left in the gray water tanks. And so at that point we started brainstorming and tracing back our steps and trying to think. And it dawned on Jolene that maybe we actually clogged that up. And so we got to the next dump station, and friends, it was clogged. So we were able to shove water up in there for a while. And when that came loose, you wouldn't imagine the coffee grounds. So now at this point, we just have a process where we strain it and we dump those in the trash can. Maybe that's something you guys knew, or maybe that's a pro tip for when you get your camper. But you know, dumping along the way has been really nice. Taking off through Utah and up to Idaho and Washington, we're able to find a lot of the state pull-offs actually have free dump stations. Now along the way, if you don't find one of those, you can stop off at an RV campground. I think we only had to do that once, and it was like 10 bucks. So that's not really too big of an issue. And we usually last about 5 days on this camper. I think this is more of a weekender camper. You know, the tanks, whether it be the gray water, the black water, or the water holding tank, the fresh water, they aren't very big. So I kind of think 5 days is its limit, unless of course you got full hookups. Now we've yet to have full hookups. We did a couple hip camps. If you're curious what hip camp is, I'll put a link to a video right here that we did. But basically guys, we've been able to go off grid the whole time. A few times we really enjoy when we're able to plug into shore power. That way we top off our batteries. Again, I can charge the computer, all the camera batteries, all the stuff we got going on. I can do a little bit of that on the battery, but if we're out for 5 days, I just don't want to risk not having lights and stuff like that. So we've integrated different things as we grow and get more money to put into this and these systems. Now we can actually monitor the battery so we have an idea of what's going on there. Of course, it's important not only to know when it's about to die, but if you're putting too much in. This old camper doesn't have a regulator. It'll keep flooding that battery with more and more power and juice, and that could actually cause overheating and potentially even a fire. So now we can monitor, and whether the truck is charging it or a generator or we have shore power somewhere, we can actually cut that off and stop putting power into the battery once it's full. We're not going to be able to cover everything in this short video, but friends, one of the last things I want to talk about is storage. As you can tell behind me, if you watch the making of this camper, we had to tear that shelf down. We're a little concerned about this roof not being strong enough, and so we took some of this weight off the walls and off the roof, and this bed is sideways in the camper. Now, what we really want is a bed that runs long ways, and that way you can walk around each side, because of course I have to go over like that, and it just gets tired. It gets old after some time. But in that situation, you'd have a shelf on this side, a shelf on that side, and you'd have all kinds of storage. So as we're moving into this camper full time, and now we have our dog with us, that's what we're finding is just a lack of storage. Now, sometimes that can be a good thing, because in our houses and our homes, we end up collecting too much stuff, and you can actually live on a lot less than you have in your house. So one of our fixes to that problem was adding a new cabinet. Now this is a multi-phase process. When we were still home, we found an old wooden table that we were able to mount, and that got us started. And luckily, when we were up over by Whidbey Island, we were at Jolene's uncle's house. Of course, you guys probably saw that video we did interviewing him, but Uncle Steve and I were able to take this shelf, cut it down a little bit smaller, and make it fit. So now we just have one more layer of storage. in this camper. There's so many joys, struggles, issues, fun, all these different adjectives rolled up into living in a camper. But friends, we gotta say that we're so blessed. God is so good. He provides like you wouldn't believe. Sometimes we think of something and He just drops it in our lap like He'd already put that in place before we realized we needed it. It's so awesome being able to pull off, whether it be a truck stop, a rest stop, a campground, even a Walmart, and just have your home with you. It's been such a joy. We've got to travel so much and we're just getting started. So guys, we hope you enjoy this content. Make sure, if you will, like all the YouTubers say, hit the bell, subscribe. That way you'll be notified whenever we put out another video. This is all about the Coachmen series, our new life over here on the road. Can't wait to show you guys where we're going next. Until the next video, guys, be blessed and we'll see you then.